Hi, I'm James Verdier, and welcome to the American Institute of Biological Sciences Bioscience Talks, which is a forum for integrating the life sciences. For today's episode, I was very fortunate to be joined by Juan Amador, who's the Executive Director for the Society for Advancement of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science, or SACNAS, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. We chatted about the organization's history, its mission, the anniversary and upcoming conference, among many other topics, and I'll be sure to include some links in the show notes. It was a great conversation, and so with no further ado, let's go to the interview. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this invitation.
Okay, so just to get us started, I was hoping you could give us a quick introduction to the organization. We'll get into topics in more depth later, but if you could just tell us a little bit about SACNAS.
Absolutely. First, let me explain our name. SACNAS stands for the Society for the Advancement of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science. And we go by SACNAS. We are a very inclusive organization, and while our target membership is Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we're very inclusive. And so anyone who's interested in the sciences is more than welcome to be a member or participate in any of our SACNAS events. We are turning 50 years this year, and we are celebrating 50 years of success. And one of the ways that we will do that is through our National Diversity in STEM conference. We call it NDiSTEM. Along with our signature event, we will also have other celebrations, including timelines and certainly highlighting the past history and the success of SACNAS.
Okay, great. And I'd love to move on and talk about some of those current activities in a little bit. But before we do so, I was wondering, you mentioned the 50th anniversary, and I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about, the organization's founding and what its kind of core mission was at that point and how that's perhaps evolved over time.
So SACNAS was founded actually in 1973, and there's a quick story to that. At the time, of course, there were not a lot of representation in the sciences from certain minority communities. And it wasn't just with Chicanos and Native Americans, but among other underserved, underrepresented populations. But the way that SACNAS was found was really in an elevator. And it was at a national conference, AAAS. And there were a core of scientists in the elevator who recognized that they did not have a home. They didn't feel like they were being included and really took it upon themselves to discuss and really come up with a plan. And that plan led to the formal establishment of SACNAS as an organization. True to its mission, SACNAS' mission is to help diversify the sciences, and sometimes we refer to as STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEAM, science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine. Throughout the 50 years, we've been focusing on really providing resources, tools, and products, and more important, a community for our members to come together to really advance not only themselves as scientists, but also to build a community where our members can come together and bring their whole self. And what that means for us is you bring your culture with you. You can't separate that out just because you're a scientist. We know that culture is important among our community. And then we also celebrate community, that community that for 50 years has been, built upon, starting with the small, maybe 50 individuals, I believe, started the first SACNAS meeting, and now we're up to over 6,000 attendees for our national conference. And then the last piece I will highlight about the founding of SACNAS and celebrating 50 years, it's that as history has shown, we still face some barriers and some obstacles till this day. And so it's key that SACNAS continue to carry out its mission. And we really are now using our vision, which is really to bring true diversity in science, or diversifying STEM. I will also share that many of our members are now in key leadership positions, and which is really important for our community, because it's important for us to see oneself. And whether you're in the research lab, in private industry, in government, in nonprofit, in higher ed, having someone at the leadership table that is part of Chicano, Hispanic, and Native American is key to us.
I was hoping we could chat just a little bit about, some of those barriers you mentioned. What kinds of challenges are faced by members of minoritized groups in science?
Well, access. Access is always a barrier, and access comes in many different forms. There's certainly financial access. Uh, it's very costly to go to either community college or a undergraduate institution or pursue your graduate degrees. And so we try to work with a lot of partners, and partners broadly include educational institutions, private industries, nonprofits, and other organizations that align with SACNAS's mission to really provide access by removing financial barriers. Another barrier is just access to information. Our students don't know what they don't know, and so when you're first generation, the application process, the financial aid process, how do you find an advisor? What is a mentor, and what is a mentor supposed to do? What are you supposed to do as a mentee? And so having relationship with gatekeepers is key, such as advisors, faculty at all levels, department chairs, deans and provosts, individuals who are in positions that really shape the access of information and resources for our students, our faculty, and our leaders. The third barrier that I'll highlight to you is just opportunities. And so at our national conference, for example, every year we have over 1,000 students presenting research and oral presentations for the first time. That will be their first time at a professional conference presenting their research. And we support them. We build a network around them, get them ready to present the research. And more importantly, we actually judge their research. And at the end of that, provide some type of reward for them. It's key to recognize that all the work that one has done, whether it is a small reward, national recognition, a picture on stage, a tweet, or anything on social media, just seeing yourself out there that you've done this. I think those are the types of barriers that SACNAS continues to remove for members.
That's very valuable. Let's talk about the value of diversity in the other direction as well. So, I think we've seen some recent work about, the value of having a diverse workforce, in inclusive spaces. But, what's the benefit to science of, creating environments, in which all people are able to, bring their whole selves and, participate on that basis?
I'm glad you started off with the research, because, it's written, it's in many journals, articles, that diversity drives excellence, and good diversity also involves good science. The inclusion of different perspectives include in advanced science. The way that we see it at SACNAS is really focused around our culture. We bring ourselves, our cultural beliefs and norms into the science, into the labs, and really helps drive the passion for the research, or help drive the passion for, leadership opportunities that one wants to pursue. And particularly when it comes to, any field in science, it changes, as I like to say, it not only changes the lives of one individual, but it impacts the entire community. And so by driving more diversity into science, we're really advancing community. We're really trying and to reach a critical mass of diversity, equity, and inclusion in sciences.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about historical impact. You've mentioned already, the what it's like for students when they attend their first conference. But let's chat a little bit more about that. What has that experience, typically been like? What kind of stories do you hear from people who are perhaps attending their first NDiSTEM meeting?
For a lot of times, for us is taking the ownership to reach out to our communities. And so the way that we do that and particularly for our students and our postdocs, is really by sending a message saying, we see the value in you. We see the value in the type of work that you're doing. So we invite them to submit for a peer review oral or poster presentation. And it is reviewed by several faculty members, ranked, and if accepted, like I said, it will be most likely their first time presenting. The other piece that we tie to that is the financial piece. Because of 2 NIH grants that we have, we are able to invite accepted presenters, in particular our students and postdocs, to apply for a travel scholarship. And that's another application separately. We ask for different type of requirements, and it is also reviewed by faculty. And if awarded a travel scholarship, then the individual has the airfare, the conference registration, the hotel, the meals, all expenses paid for. So that's key for us because, again, what we're trying to remove is those barriers. We are trying to build up not only self-esteem, professional and leadership development, but also certainly a CV or a resume to show outcomes of what an individual has been doing in the lab, or combing through the literature to come up with original research. The other piece that I would highlight about our conference is that we see the smiles on our students, but those smiles, I would say, sometimes filled with, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm doing this. And so therefore, the part that we also build is mentoring, really having, from the moment they step onto that conference, and we pair them up one-on-one with faculty members so that way they can ask questions. How do I present? Where do I look? Where do I point? What are my key points? What if I'm getting 10 questions at the same time? A little bit of that coaching, a little bit of that training. Then we move into practice. You got practice. Present your poster to us, and then the next day you actually are ready. You'll still have the butterflies. And part of what we do with the community is really encourage our community to go around as many posters as they can. Not only to ask questions, but certainly to give compliments, to really help, again, a first-time presenter. A little bit of encouragement goes a long way. And I think the last piece is that when we acknowledge our winners for those posters and oral presentations, there is nothing that makes me happier than invite them on the stage, on the national stage for SACNAS, where all the lights are on them. It's not about us, but it's about our students and our postdocs, and giving them that moment on a national platform to shine and take that picture and send it back to their institutions, because we know that institutions are trying to, or some of them are increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion, but a picture tells 1,000 words. And I always like to say, I need that picture. I need that smiling 1,000 students on there celebrating their success.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's in a sense the representation that will be seen by the students who are even at an earlier stage right now.
Absolutely. We actually take those to tell our stories, to every message that comes out of SACNAS, so we think needs to have a picture behind that. A picture of at networking. What does networking look like? When you've never been to a national conference and you walk into a room of 300 to 500 individuals and you're like there, you know, a picture of again a presentation, pictures of cultural events, our annual powwow is a huge time for us to celebrate culture at SACNAS.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's now, and you've mentioned a couple of times the size of the meeting, the number of people who are a member of the organization. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the growth years of SACNAS and how it's become very large over time and become a very big destination for research.
Well, that's been intentional. Certainly a lot of work before I arrived as the executive director. SACNAS has always had strategic plans developed and implemented by board and staff. In the last couple of years, coming out of the pandemic, the type of growth that we've seen is because of the commitment that we have to help diversify STEM. Um, and so, from, like I said, 50 to 1,000 to 500, and now we're up to 6,000 individuals. What I did, I did a listening tour, and I asked my members, I was like, what do you enjoy most about SACNAS and coming to SACNAS? Um, Most of the time, the answers that I got were, or included, were like, I feel like I'm at home. I feel like I'm attending a conference where I am among my community. I see myself, I see my colleagues, I see my research, I see how I could be the next leader. The other piece has been celebrating our culture. One of the videos that we do almost every year is to highlight the attire, the regalia, or what our attendees wear to the conference. And it really is reflective of the culture. Uh, the other piece has been just the access to our expo hall, the access to meet representatives from NASA, NIH, National Science Foundation, Department of Education, but it's also private industry like Google, Amazon, Eli Lilly. And then again, having core educational institutions being represented, not by one booth, but maybe by 20. There are many institutions that have so many programs, and so that access becomes important. And I'll share a little bit of a personal observation, is that when I walk the exhibit hall, and I see students that are just there, and I know that look. I know the look of like, what do I do next? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? So I actually just, go right in front of them, introduce myself, ask them what their major are, what their career aspirations are, and then I'm like, okay, let me guide you. Let me introduce you to this organization or this representative. Oh, or have you even thought about this? Oh my God, you have so many options. Let's explore a couple of them. That's key for me. That providing that venue and that those opportunities for all of our members.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly valuable for them. I'm wondering if we could touch on just briefly, the breadth of the science that's kind of expressed at that meeting and among your members. What kinds of things are being discussed at those meetings?
So we do have a national call for proposals to populate all of our content. And so we like to break our content up to probably into a couple of areas. One is real hard science, the hard science of the research, what are you doing in the lab, the what's going on in the environment. We also like to separate into professional and leadership development. And particularly, the example I use is, how to go through the ranks of promotion and tenure, and getting yourself ready, the science, all your credentials, leadership development in terms of what are the core competencies that you need to aspire to be the next dean, the next leader in the lab, the next provost. And then that other piece that I'll say is that we open it up to our students again to, what do they need? And what type of support do they need? So I'm going to go back to the content of providing mentorship. We have sessions that really focus on conversation with scientists, where a scientist will host a couple of students. No questions can't be, all questions can be asked. Nothing is off the table, but it really is an opportunity for, again, probably the first time for many of our attendees to have a conversation, meet an astronaut, meet a marine biologist, meet a geologist, meet a mathematician, an engineer, a doctor, you know, uh, there's so many options. What we try to do really is to be interdisciplinary. We monitor what science fields are missing, and where do we need to outreach to, and where do we need to increase our efforts, because we know that providing opportunities are key.
And I'm wondering now about your own personal involvement and SACNAS and your path to becoming the executive director thereof. What drew you to the organization originally?
I've always known about SACNAS through its reputation. Our annual National Diversity in STEM conference, and I had never attended, but I was at an organization where the faculty always made it a point annually to recruit from the conference. And part of my journey to arriving to SACNAS is because uh, when I learned that they had an executive director position open, I really looked at their mission. And the mission is part of who I am. It's part of how I've grown up. It's part of, I'm a product of many things. And I like to share that I'm a product of community college. I'm a product of being a non-traditional student. I didn't go right away into college. I went to, just to do my own thing in life. I went to undergraduate. I went to an undergraduate school that focused on STEM at the time. I wanted to be a physical therapy major, but I changed and I did a community and public health. It spoke to me. I found a passion in that. And then it led me to work with faculty and students and just learning a lot about the hardships of becoming a full professor, or getting that tenure position, or applying to a graduate program or a professional school and getting declined, or saying, you know what, you're not good enough. Why don't you do something else? It's like, so SACNAS spoke and said, I have an opportunity to help widen that workforce. And what I mean by that is like some of the conversations that I've been involved with is like, there are not many of us, individuals of color or communities of color represented in the sciences. And so here's my opportunity to partner with the phenomenal board and staff and partners to widen that pool, to make sure that our partnerships benefit our students and our faculty, so that way we can diversify our institutions. We can help our institutions become more inclusive now more than ever, which is needed.
Yeah, and that sounds like a very valuable story to be able to tell to students, because there's often, when I speak with anybody who's very early in career, this a perception that one's course is necessarily a single track to a high level or senior position, and so often it seems that it's a little bit non-traditional and things don't necessarily follow in that direct way that sometimes people perceive, but it's very valuable for them to kind of understand that that's not necessarily the case.
It's key. I think many of us have been asked to assimilate to the fact that you have a traditional path: high school, college, graduate, workforce. You work, you retire, you're successful. But from our communities, it may not look like that way. It may look like, when you're first generation, you may be getting an associate's degree and going into the workforce. And in that case, what we advise or we share with our students is like, look for organizations that will support your continuing education. Maybe they'll pay for your bachelor's, your master's, your graduate degree. If you're going right into your graduate programs, hey, let's look for those opportunities at fellowships or research opportunities or internships. Let us help you identify that passion that you have with a couple of opportunities. Other factors that we take into consideration is also, the pandemic changed a lot, and we know that our tribal colleges and universities are unique, not only in terms of culture, in terms of education and resources, but a couple of things that we have done in keeping in place is virtual activities. They're valid. They're easier for us to host and easier for our members to access them, whether it's on a cell phone, on a computer, in a group setting. We really want to support our Indigenous and Native American, Alaskan Native communities.
Let's talk a little bit about, the way that the upcoming conference will kind of help you achieve those goals. Where is the conference and what kinds of things are you looking forward to for it?
So this year we are going to celebrate our 50th year in Portland, Oregon, October the 26th through the 28th. And we're so excited. We have done a site visit to prepare. And in preparing, we've engaged, again, our local community, not only our educational institutions, but certainly our Indigenous communities, businesses and partners, just the hotel and the meeting industry. When we put on our conference, we put on an experience for everyone to attend. And part of that excitement is going to be celebrating the past, the present, and the future. It's a 3-day full-packed event. It does include 2 major cultural events, among others, but our powwow is going to return, and we open that up to the community. We really celebrate the culture, and then we're going to end it with a pachanga for our 50th anniversary, which is really a celebration of SACNAS and our success. The other piece that I'm highly excited about, again, it comes back to reconnecting with the faculty members, and particularly helping them also celebrate their success, whether they obtained their first academic appointment as an assistant professor or a lecturer, or they got promoted to an associate professor or a full professor, or have moved on to a leadership role. Of course, we're aiming for over 6,000 individuals, and we can't wait.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting. I'm sure our listeners are going to be wondering, how they can get involved, and they'll be very excited about this. Of course, attending the meeting. But what other ways would you suggest that those who are hearing something today and it's resonating with them, kind of take that forward?
I would say, please consider donating to SACNAS. We are an organization where we support our members. And again, I mentioned by removing barriers. And so any donation in any amount, visit SACNAS.org. And if your company or your organization does a matching, consider putting SACNAS on the list as a potential organization to do matching. Of course, you are welcome to become a member of SACNAS. Support SACNAS through membership. We have various levels of membership. And number 3, I would say, help us tell our story. Connect with us on social media. Retweet us, reshare, or comment on something that we are sharing about our members, about our work, our success. I think the community can help us tell our story.
Absolutely, and I think that many will be happy to do so. And I'll include links in the show notes, for those who'd like to donate or become members as well. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, I'd like to thank you for this wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed, and thank you again for the invitation.
And thank you very much for taking me up on it.
All right, great day.
And that concludes this episode of Bioscience Talks. Just a reminder, the journal Bioscience is published by Oxford University Press on behalf of the American Institute of Biological Sciences and is made possible by the support of our members and donors. Thank you, and talk to you next time.